the morning they dragged Solon Vare. Off the academy steps, the whole of Calvrath's merchant quarter turned out to watch. He hadn't fought back. That was the part people kept talking about afterward. How still he'd been, while Director Marin Voss's enforcement officers stripped the licensing badge from his coat, how he hadn't shouted or begged or even looked angry. He'd just stood there in his worn commoner's jacket, with his hands at his sides, and when the officer pushed him down the last step onto the cobblestones, Solon had steadied himself and looked out at the crowd as if he were trying to memorize their faces. Benefactor's chain, Voss, announced from the academy portico, not bothering to raise his voice. The square was already silent. He held Solon's badge up between two fingers like something unclean. F-tier, useless support classification, no combat application, no economic yield, no tactical value. He dropped the badge on the step. The licensing board has determined this class is a drain on Calvrath's ranked ecosystem. License revoked. Academy district residency terminated. Crowd laughed, not all of them, but enough. Solon Vare was 17 years old, orphaned at 9, and had spent the last 3 years giving away everything he earned. It had started without a system. Before the classification ceremony, before the badge, before any of it. Solon had just been the boy in the outer district who split his wages with the family 2 doors down when their youngest got sick, who carried messages for the old letter runner whose knees had given out, who handed his dinner to the beggar outside the grain exchange, and then went home and ate nothing. People in the outer district called him kind. People in the merchant quarter called him stupid. The consortium had a sharper word. The system had appeared 3 weeks after his ceremony, quiet as a candle lighting in a dark room. Benefactor's chain, activated. Bond link tokens accumulate on verified acts of genuine giving. No simulated transactions. No reciprocal exchanges, only the real thing. Current bond links, 0. He'd read it twice. Then he'd gone back to work. The system didn't explain what bond links did, it just counted. And Solon, with no license and academy district address, walked back to the outer district that same afternoon he was expelled, found the baker on Kren Street, who'd been shorted by a consortium supplier, and spent his last 6 coins making up the difference. Bond link token added. Total, 312. He stopped walking. 312. He'd been counting wrong. Or rather, he hadn't been counting at all. Every meal split, every message carried, every hour of unpaid labor for someone the consortium had squeezed. It had all been slugging silently since the day the class awakened. 312 lives, recorded and linked. Millstone, resonant give. Unlocked at 100 links, effect. Sources given by the holder regenerate at 40% within 72 hours via network redistribution. The chain feeds itself. Solon sat down on the curb outside the bakery and read that twice too. Then he looked at his empty coin pouch. 40% back within 72 hours. He'd been giving things away for 3 years, and the system had been quietly returning a fraction of everything. Enough to keep him from starving. Enough to keep him moving, and he hadn't even noticed because he'd never stopped to check the math. He started checking the math. The outer district was large, and the consortium's reach was long and mean. Voss's people taxed the market stalls at 30% above charter rate, shorted the grain allocations to non-guild families, and ran the information brokers, who decided which names appeared on the licensed class registry and which names got quietly buried. Solon had known all of this. What he hadn't known was how many people the consortium had touched, and how many of those people he had, in some small way, also touched. He kept giving. Without the academy district address, he had no storefront, no stall license, no legal standing to operate in the main market, so he worked the margins. He fixed the roof of the message runner's hall in exchange for the use of a corner desk. He translated consortium shipping manifests for the outer district merchants who couldn't read the guild script and took no coin for it, only the information itself. He sat with the children of families whose parents worked double shifts and taught them the numbers the academy had. Him. The bond link counter climbed. Total bond links 400 millstone. Chain surge. Unlocked effect. The network becomes aware of itself. Each linked person's needs and resources are visible to the holder as a living map. The chain can route surplus to shortage, information to those who need it, shelter to the displaced, at the holder's direction. The first time the map opened, Solon had to close his eyes. It was like standing in the center of a city and suddenly being able to hear every heartbeat. 400 people, their needs, their surpluses, their fears, their skills, laid out in a web of soft light that only he could see. The grain merchant, on Kren Street, had 40 surplus sacks she couldn't move because the consortium had blocked her from the main market registry. 12 families in the Eastern Ward needed grain and had coin. Solon spent one afternoon routing the connection. No transaction touched the consortium's books. No tax was owed. The merchant sold her surplus, the families were fed, and the consortium's information brokers found nothing to report because there was nothing to find. Just a boy walking from door to door, carrying word. He did it again the next day and the day after. Total bond links, 6 Orn Millistone network pulse, unlocked effect. The holder may broadcast a single clear intention through the network. All linked persons receive it simultaneously. No compulsion, only clarity. They choose. Solon tested it once. He broadcast one word. Steady. Every person in the network felt it, felt him, calm and unhurried at the center of everything, and the effect rippled outward through the outer district like a slow breath. Arguments cooled. Panic about the consortium's new tariff announcement faded. People got back to work. He didn't use the broadcast again. He didn't need to. He just kept moving. Voss noticed the outer district's tax yield dropping 8 months after expulsion. The investigation took another 3 months. Voss's information brokers couldn't find a black market, couldn't find a smuggling route, couldn't find a rival guild. What they found instead was a 17-year-old former academy student with no license, no registered address, and an F-tier class that the board had publicly rated useless, apparently wandering the outer district doing favors for people. Voss read the report twice and found it embarrassing to take seriously. He sent a second team. The second team reported the same thing. They also noted, with some confusion, that every time they attempted to document Solon's movements, the outer district residents seemed to know they were coming. Not aggressively, no one blocked or threatened. People simply went quiet, became unhelpful in a thoroughly polite way, and the team found they were somehow always half a street behind. Total bond links, 889. Voss stopped trying to investigate and started trying to remove. He filed a vagrancy ordinance against Solon's outer district residency, technically valid, since Solon had no registered address. He had the corner desk at the message runner's hall, flagged for unlicensed commercial activity. He contacted the 3 outer district landlords who owed the consortium favors, and had Solon's sleeping arrangement in the back of the letter runner's storage room declared an illegal sublease. On the morning the eviction notice was delivered, Solon read it, folded it carefully, put it in his coat pocket. Then he walked to the consortium hall. He didn't bring anyone with him. He walked in through the public entrance, crossed the main floor, and sat down in the open petition chair across from Director Voss's desk, without being invited. Voss looked at him for a long moment. Then he laughed. The same short, dismissive sound he'd made on the academy steps 9 months ago. Have no license, no address, no standing to file a petition. Voss leaned back. Whatever you think you're doing, you're done in Calvrath. I'm having you removed from the city limits by end of day. Solon looked at him. His expression didn't change. Total bond links, 999, I know, Solon said quietly. He reached into his coat pocket, not for the eviction notice, for the small worn ledger he'd carried since the day after his expulsion. He set it on Voss's desk. That's every transaction you've shorted, every tariff you've overcharged, every registry entry you've buried, for the last 4 years. Cross-referenced with the consortium charter. I had help translating the guild script. Voss opened the ledger. His face didn't change immediately. It took him 3 pages, bond link token added. 1,000 millistone. Absolute network, crystallized, class rank revised. Unranked, above classification the chain all 1. Linked persons receive. Network pulse, full broadcast. Holder's intention. Clarity the outer district moved. Not violently. Solon had not asked for violence. And violence was not what came. What came was information. The 1,000 people in the network had spent 8 months quietly observing, documenting, and remembering everything the consortium touched, because Solon had touched them first, and they had learned to pay attention. Now, in the space of 4 hours, that information moved. The licensed guild arbiters received 73 sworn dispositions detailing charter violations. The city's trade registry board received a cross-referenced filing, assembled by 11 former academy students Solon had tutored, documenting 4 years of registration fraud. 3 of Voss's supply chain partners, themselves bond-linked through separate kindnesses Solon had done their families, quietly withdrew their quarterly contracts. The information brokers the consortium employed stopped returning Voss's messages because 6 of them, in the network, and the 7th had a mother, in the Eastern Ward, whose grain Solon had quietly routed 4 months ago. By the time the sun reached midday, Voss's vote block on the city licensing board was short by 9. By late afternoon, 2 of his senior partners had tendered their resignations from the consortium directory. At the 6th hour, Director Marin Voss walked into the consortium hall's public chamber, where Solon was still sitting, unhurried, unremarkable, in his worn commoner's coat and Voss's legs bent. He knelt, not because the network compelled him. The absolute network carried no compulsion. Solon had designed nothing of the sort, and the system had built only what he was. Voss knelt because there was simply nothing left to stand on. Every lever he owned had been rerouted. Every advantage he held had quietly walked across to the other side over the course of 8 months, one small kindness at a time, and he had not noticed until the floor gave way. "Stop it," Voss said. His voice came out smaller than he intended. "Whatever you're doing, call it off. We can negotiate. I can restore your license. I can reverse the eviction. Name a price." Solon stood up from the petition chair. He picked up his ledger from the desk, tucked it back into his coat pocket, and looked down at Director Voss for one quiet moment. "The arbiters have the depositions," he said. "The registry board has the filing. I didn't ask anyone to do anything. They just knew what I needed." He walked past Voss toward the door. Behind him, the consortium hall was filling. The arbiters, the registry officials, 2 city aldermen who had been bond-linked through separate, unremarkable kindnesses Solon had done their families. None of them looked at Voss. 3 days later, the city licensing board convened an emergency session. The benefactor's chain class was pulled from the F-tier registry, reclassified, and given a new designation at the board's unanimous recommendation. Unranked, above classification, the chain. The motion was seconded by 9 members. The 10th abstained. The 10th had been Voss's last remaining ally on the board, and he abstained because his daughter worked in the outer district message hall, keened, and Solon had once spent an afternoon helping her learn the guild script for free, and she had told her father about it, and her father had quietly decided, when the moment came, that there were some things a man just could not vote against. Solon Vare heard about the reclassification the following morning. From the baker on Kren Street, who had heard it from the letter runner, who had heard it from one of the arbiters, who had been linked to the network since the day, Solon spent his last 6 coins making up a supplier's shortfall. He thanked the baker. He split a loaf of bread with the family next door, bond link token added. Total. The chain kept growing.